everyone once again, whatever everyone's are out there. Today is Wednesday, February the 24th, and where I am today, it has actually warmed up and it's quite gorgeous. It's bright and sunny and in the 40s, which is pretty astounding. So I hope the weather where you are is also conducive to lifting spirits and that you are doing well. We're really glad to be back with you today. I'm Ms. Shepherd. I'm here with Ms. Ross once again, and I'll let her say hello too.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Shepherd. Just really grateful to be able to be back with you all again. Still missing not being there in person as always and hearing from you all about how you're practicing, what your experience is, but just hoping that connecting this way, even though I can't see you, it just feels like we can make a stronger connection, and just really thinking about you and hoping that something that we do today resonates with you and helps sustain you in your practice. So just grateful that you're here with sharing this time with us. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we will run today as we generally do. We'll light the candles and incense, and then we'll do some chanting, which I'll talk about in a minute. We'll have a guided meditation, and then there's something I want some things to say, and then a bit of a talk I want to play for you. And we'll try to fit in a short meditation at the end as well. So for the chanting today, I thought what we do are the refuges and precepts, which we've done before. And if you have the chant books there, if you're meeting in the chapel, I don't know at which institutions you're meeting in the chapel, or whether this is just online for you. Or on the network. Some of you have the chanting book that I had given out. If you do have that, the refuges and precepts are on page 19 and 20. What I'm going to do today is there is they call it a chanting karaoke that Abhayagiri Monastery has produced for the refuges and the precepts. So we'll do the refuges with it. I'll put it on the screen. We'll do the share screen, and you can follow along with the chanting. It's all in Pali. For the precepts, that recording only has the 8 precepts, which we don't take here. You don't need to take 8. We take 5. So I'll stop it at the precepts, and then we'll just do those together here. And then I'll ring the bell, and we'll have some meditation time. Okay.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Ti sarana gamanang nititang. Anatipata Poeramani Sikapadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
Okay, we'll do those together now. I'm sorry about the glitch. So we'll start again at the beginning. So this is on page 20 if you have your book. Anatipata viramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Anitapata Veramani Sikapadam Samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
Anadidana viramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana Veramani Sikapadam Samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
Kame sumichachara viramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Kamesu michacharam veramani sikapadam samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct.
I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct.
Musawada viramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Musawada veramani sikapadam samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from false and harmful speech.
I undertake the precept to refrain from false and harmful speech.
Suramaraya maja pamadatana viramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Sura mera maja pamadatana veramani sikapadam samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
I undertake the precept to refrain from intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
These 5 precepts have virtue as a vehicle for happiness, have virtue as a vehicle for good, have virtue as a vehicle for liberation. Let virtue be purified.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Coming into this body, this moment. just sitting here, wherever you are, just being where you are. What would that mean needs to be released? Letting go of the thoughts about what happened before, what might be coming into this moment right now. Knowing that nothing needs to be added. Feeling the weight of the body. The weight on the chair or wherever you're sitting. If you're on the floor, feeling the floor supporting you. Allowing any tension you notice to release. Aligning the spine and the neck and the head so that they're upright but not rigid or stiff, but upright, lifted. When they're upright and lifted, it's easier to breathe. The chest has room to expand. The belly has room to expand. The skeleton supports the muscles. The muscles don't have to do as much work. That uprightness also allows the mind to be brighter. When the spine is bent or collapsed, the mind collapses too. Noticing any sensations in the body. Warmth, coolness, tingling, maybe a sense of energy or a sense of lethargy, a sense of lack of energy. Just noticing what's present in the actual felt experience. What's being sensed right now. Checking in with any spots where you know you hold tension. Is the forehead at ease and relaxed, or is it tightened, lifted? Let it drop. Same with the tongue and jaw. Let them release, relax. Tongue resting on the floor of the mouth. Jaw not clenched. Even the eyes, allow the eyes and the eye sockets and the eyeballs to all relax. Release. Sometimes even with the eyes closed, we can have a sense of the eyes darting around, trying to see. You don't need to, nothing to see. Can there be a sense of the eyeballs just resting in the eye sockets? So many little muscles there that are active all day long. What would it be like to relax those? And then the neck and shoulders, another place we often hold tension. Letting the shoulders drop down, back. Maybe wiggling the neck just a little bit to get it aligned. either continuing to investigate sensations throughout the body, or if it seems appropriate, finding the breath, connecting with breathing. Noticing how the breath arises and then exhales. Being curious about what breath is like right now, how it might be changing from moment to moment. Where and how it's easiest for you to connect with it, be really with it for each inhale and each exhale. How can your attention be like a leaf floating on the water of the breath? Right there with the water as the waves rise and the waves falls. Your attention is like that leaf right there with the water. Your attention is right there with each inhalation and each exhalation. But it's not a grabby, clingy kind of connection. It's a gentle, easy connection, just like the leaf gently resting on the water. You're totally present and connected, but it's a gentle connection. Breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out. Over and over. Again and again. Noticing any changes in the rhythm, in the speed, in the feel of it. And if or when the mind wanders away and you notice you're no longer that leaf on the water, instead the leaf has become airborne and is lost in thought, gently allow the leaf to drop back onto the breath and begin again. Staying with each in-breath and each exhale. Breathing in, maybe even holding just a moment at the top and breathing out. Exhaling completely before that next inhale. And maybe anytime after you've meditated, it's always useful to check in again. How does the body feel now? Does it feel different? How does the mind feel now? Does that feel different? Is there a greater sense of ease or space, comfort, less reactivity, just a calmer, slower state? So what I wanted to do today was tell you all something I wish that I hope I made clearer before, but that maybe I haven't done it quite as explicitly as I'd really like to do. That in a couple of weeks, I've been invited to give a talk to a non-Buddhist group. And what they wanted to hear about, these people knew that I have been volunteering in the prison for many years. And what they wanted to hear about was that. And so I wrote up the talk. And I realized that what I say in there are things that you should know, which is how much I've learned from coming to prison, how much I admire all of you that have taken on this path and this practice under such very difficult conditions, how much I admire and am inspired by your willingness to keep at it, by your interest in awakening and freeing the mind, by your courage and acting in ways that, as the Buddha would say, very much go against the stream, certainly in the society at large and as well in prison, maybe even more in prison. By your willingness to develop kindness and generosity and compassion in an environment that sort of emphasizes the opposite. That is so incredible, such a gift to me, to everyone you encounter, to the world. And it has meant an enormous amount to me and to everyone that I've encountered who I then talk about it with. And I just want to be sure you know that you know how inspiring it is to encounter people who are practicing wherever they are. It doesn't matter if you are practicing in prison or practicing, in the White House. I wish people would be practicing in the White House. This practice is not easy. It goes against the stream. And to see people who have taken it on, as all of you have, as you keep trying, and it doesn't mean you need to be perfect. I'm not expecting or saying that I think you're perfect. I don't think you are. I don't think I am. But we've kept at it, or we've picked it up and have started it. That's what it takes. Some days maybe it falls away a little bit more, maybe even some weeks, but then you pick it up again. We begin again. We begin again, because we remember that sincere intention to have less suffering, to feel more at ease in our own skin, in our own body, in our own heart. And that keeps us going. Keeps me going, it keeps all of you going. And that each of us support the other. That knowing you're practicing supports my practice, hopefully you knowing I'm practicing supports your practice, that we support each other in this way to remember our deep aspiration to awaken, to be a force of good in this world to the best of our ability. to not cause harm. So hopefully you knew that already. But it's always, I hope, good to be reminded of how important you are to other people you don't even know, maybe. So thank you so much for your practice, for sharing it with me, and for being on this path, because as we all know, it's not an easy path. But as I often try to remind myself, while it's not an easy path, for me, it certainly is way easier than the way I used to live when I was suffering so much more, when I was overcome by worry and anxiety all the time, when I was trying to live through other people's lives that were not my own. Those things were not easy either. They were, in fact, much harder than life is since I've discovered this path and tried to live according to it. So what I want to do now is allow you to listen to another person who's incredibly inspiring. That just this week, there was a summit on the internet. It began, I think, a week ago today, and it goes through tomorrow. But on Monday, so this is Wednesday, so 2 days ago, they aired an interview with Jarvis J Masters, someone that some of you may have known from his book, Finding Freedom. Jarvis J Masters is in San Quentin on death row to this day. The interview was recorded in San Quentin, and he's there on death row. He has a life, or I guess a death sentence, not a life sentence. And he's been there for almost 40 years. And he is a Buddhist. He's a Vajrayana Buddhist, a Tibetan Buddhist. But, it doesn't matter what sort of Buddhist you are, what you name yourself as a Buddhist, which way of these practices are. But what he shares with any of us, regardless which practice we are following, is this intention to live a life of virtue and kindness and compassion, to awaken to the truth of how things are, to liberate the heart and mind, finding freedom, as his book title says. So I'm going to play this interview. It's about the first 12 minutes or 11 minutes or so of the interview. Maybe at a future time we can play a little more of it. I'm hoping that it recorded well enough for you to hear. It's just an audio recording. So I will begin it.
Jarvis Masters. I've been in San Quentin for close to 40 years, a few months short of that. I became a Buddhist in 1991, I think, or 92. I've written 2 books, one, Finding Freedom, and the other is That Bird Has My Wings. I have various teachers, and all my teachers have given me the benefit of their experience in the last 30 years, and I've been using those experiences in prison as much as they fit the circumstances that we live in.
How did you get introduced to Buddhism back in 91 or 90? How did you find it?
I was waiting to see if I was going to receive a death sentence for the death of a sergeant, Sergeant Burstfield at San Quentin, that occurred in 1985. And my friend and teacher, one of my teachers, Melody Child, thought because I was down there in the holding tank that I might want to read a magazine that was familiar to her, and it was called Inquiring Mind. And inside Inquiring Mind, they had this little clip, and it said free book, and the name of the book was Life in Relationship to Death. And I sat there and read it for almost a week while the jury's in deliberation. And I just thought, hey, let me try this, Life in Relationship to Death. It was where I was, I wasn't there because And I took heart to that, and eventually I got a free copy of the book, and I wrote to thank them. And a woman named Lisa Leghorn responded, and we created correspondence. And at some point, I realized she was a senior student of who is now my teacher, Tuku Rinpoche. And eventually, he came down to visit me a few times, and at some point I was giving the empowerment. It's a ceremony that was just basically to introduce me to Vajrayana Buddhism, and I became a student of that practice, and I was giving a practice called the Red Tar practice, and I thought that practice, as I began to sit with it, was a very clear, honest way of opening me up to see where freedom really is.
What is the Red Tara practice?
Red Tara practice is a guide, a way of opening the door of confronting our suffering, the suffering of all beings, and it's a prayer that allows us to, work on that, work on opening many, many doors that has been locked. They were locked for me in particular because there was a lot of things I was in denial. There was a lot of things that I didn't pay attention to that my life gave some purpose for, and I really, really got into it. I thought it as a perfect guide for where I was going in my life.
Why? What was it about Buddhism in particular that drew you in?
Oh, it was the opening gate. It opened a lot of doors. It opened a lot of gates for me to sit with. It was a practice with, that had meditation, a lot of meditation. It was a practice that dealt with me and the suffering that I was dealing with, the human suffering that I was dealing with.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
And it taught me how to begin the process of dissolving those things, those obstacles that has been in my life.
What was that like, Jarvis? Like when you first meditated? So you're sitting there and you're waiting to hear the verdict back on the death sentence. Walk us through your experience with meditation. Was it frustrating at first? Did you take to it like a fish to water?
No, I just learned how to sit down and do probably the opposite. I just sat down and started thinking. That was a good thing for me because I had to learn how to sit down first before I learned how to meditate. I was a very angry person, and I didn't particularly think sitting down was, fulfilling for me at that time. So I just had to learn how to sit down and sit down with me, and that took a while. There was a lot of times where I was bored with it, but I made a commitment to myself and just sit there. And things start opening up, gates start opening up, windows start becoming with more fresh air than I had ever felt before. And that was a beautiful time for me. It really was. And I was dealing with San Quentin, and I was dealing with death row, and I was dealing with how did I get to this point in my life. And I started realizing that we all suffer to some degree or another, and that I was not alone. And one of the things one of my teachers taught me was that, you're not the worst case. There's many people who have far more worse problems than you. And that was a guiding light for me, to not think of me for me, but to think of all beings and all people who suffer way more than I do. And I really felt a companionship with that,
Was it difficult at first? I mean, did you have any resentment? Because to tell you that there are people worse off than you, here you are potentially on death row. How did that sit with you?
I learned Buddhism pretty much at the feet of my teacher. So I was really, really guided. I was very trained. I had the benefit of really, really having a sangha, a community, and I had members of that community visit me often. So I never went outside what I was trained to sit with. Was it difficult? I think it was not in retrospect. Was it boring? Of course, that was, yes, it was boring, very boring. For me, I just had the benefit of having teachers all around me, my age, older than me, folks who've been into Buddhism 20 years before I had. And these people really, really trained me, taught me a lot. But more than that, they taught me how to teach myself. And that was something I never really had the ability to learn how to teach myself. You can find all kinds of teachers, and all kinds of teachers want you to think like they do or practice like they do. In my community, it taught me how to think for myself, taught me how to become my own practitioner, because they recognized that I was on San Quentin death row. And for many of them, they couldn't even fathom the thoughts of being physically on death row. So for them, they thought, wow, he really is suffering. He is in that sea of suffering. He is facing death, real death. And they made me realize that, but they also made me realize that that is nothing close to being the end of who I was. It was the beginning of who I became. I just had the opportunity to have some serious people around me.
So you learned, the first step was to learn to sit with yourself. Can you describe what that looked like? I assume you sat in your 9x4 cell and just sat on the ground?
Yeah, I just sat on the ground. I mean, I didn't want to sit on no cushion. I wanted to sit on the ground because I really wanted to feel what my body was going through. I really wanted to feel that sense of suffering. I didn't want to make this place comfortable. And I was determined not to do that. I was determined not to hide behind, being a Buddhist and having a Buddhist community as my way of getting through all the doors that I needed to.
At what point did sitting with yourself evolve into a meditation practice, and what did that look like?
Well, I thought one of the reasons, and this is in retrospect, because this happened, 30 years ago. So I think I was trying to drown out the noise that became my sense of refuge. I was really trying to drown out the noise because San Quentin is a very, very, very loud place. So I was trying to drown out the noise. And a lot of things came to mind that one practitioner or another or a friend had said to me, and I sat with that, just out of curiosity, And then I started getting some guidance about meditation, and those particular instructions.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. You have 60 seconds remaining.
Excuse me. A lot of them did not fit. So I had to figure out a way to make my practice fit the conditions that I was living in. And that gave me a lot of room to explore, to come with a genuine heart, but to explore how do you get along with people being a Buddhist. I mean, you being a Buddhist and no one else,
Right.
And there was very few Buddhists, so I had to figure out how to do that, And that became sort of like a practice, You can have your meditation practice, you can have your sitting, and you can have your instruction. But San Quentin gave me a new way of thinking about Buddhism.
So, quite a wonderful teacher. The things that struck me, and then I'll see what Ms. Ross wants to add, were this idea of he didn't start meditating. He started just being willing to sit down and just be there with himself. And that his practice, that he had the benefit of wonderful teachers and a sangha people who came to visit him. You have a Sangha, you have the community of other Buddhists there in the prison. You have Miss Ross and me. But that, as important as that was for him, what was most important was him making it his own practice, realizing that he was his own teacher, that he had to take in these teachings and then figure out how did they work and apply in his life in San Quentin. How does it fit the conditions of his life? That there isn't an ideal way to be Buddhist, a way to meditate, that all of that has to be based on what's true for your own heart, your own mind. Ms. Ross, thoughts you have?
Yeah, I think I noted a lot of those same same things. And what's kind of interesting is, it's really similar to my practice too. I mean, we all have, however the teachings came to us, and whatever we have for a Sangha, we have some people that support us, but ultimately it came down to, what does this mean, in my mind, in my heart? And so we can rely on the supports of the teachings and of our Sangha, but, we ultimately have to look inside of ourselves, and because our minds are all different, our hearts are all different, our experience is all different, our suffering is all different. So we do have to learn to be our own teacher. And the Buddha actually taught that. He gave some teachings, but most of the time, he would give his disciples some teaching, but then they were off having to do the practice on their own. And we have the support of this bigger Sangha, but and we know it's there, and we can go to that for refuge, knowing that we're not alone on this path, but also that we are our own wisest teacher, because only we know how this resonates and works in our own heart. So I just hope that all of you can feel inspired by Jarvis's practice and his path, and maybe it's similar to yours, but just knowing that he's on this path, Miss Shepherd and I are on this path with you, and I take refuge in being on this path with you all. That our meetings, whether in person or on Zoom, mean a lot to me. And you, as Miss Shepherd said earlier, you support my practice, and I'm really grateful for that, knowing that you all are doing this practice as well. So that's my reflection.
Thank you. So maybe there's another 20 minutes or so of the talk. He does get cut off. You heard the operator say 60 minutes more, 60 seconds more, and it does end, but it picks up again right away. So maybe we can listen to the rest at another session. But, I hope for all of you that just knowing about his practice, just knowing that he's been there for 40 years, sitting on death row, and he stepped up to live this life, and that he's glad he did it. It's not that poor him, he had to do this all these years. It's that he's grateful that he did this all these years, that it has allowed him to survive in that difficult situation. Difficult, crazy word, that impossible situation, that, unbelievable situation. And that he's been able to do it. And still, you hear, this is a kind, gentle man. And so to realize there is a way to survive. One of the things I talked about in the talk that I told you I had to write is that was really, I think, the question that caused me to have an interest in starting to come to prison. Is that question of how does one survive in those kinds of conditions, those kinds of situations? I think many of you know I grew up Jewish, My parents were immigrants who had fled terrible pogroms in the Ukraine, Russia at the time, now Ukraine. So the idea that it wasn't beyond a possibility that I could do at some point be imprisoned was very much always in my mind. I've always sort of thought that probably a fairly good chance I could end up in prison someday. Not necessarily for committing a crime, but maybe for committing a crime if the government established rules that I felt were in themselves criminal and I felt I had to go against them. But so that this idea of how does one survive? How does one, the Holocaust was very much in my consciousness, as I was always. And so this idea of how do you sustain your humanity in an inhumane situation? And just hearing, Mr. Jarvis, knowing about Nelson Mandela, knowing about so many people, knowing all of you, that you can survive and that people do survive and they grow and they get even better, even in these kinds of situations. To me, that's always been so important to realize, to remember, to know the truth of, and that I could do it too, because humans can do it, and all of you can do it. We all could do it. And that to me is what makes the practice worthwhile, why I practice. So let's end with some meditation. I think we have time for an 8-minute or so meditation. Ms. Ross, would you lead us?
Sure. So, as my teacher would say, maybe letting go of the words. We've been talking about a lot of things, but now we can set the intention to just let all that thinking, those concepts and everything, just not holding on to them, but just letting them move on as we come back into our sense of just presence right here, right now, bringing our awareness back into this mind, this body, this experience, and we'll let the bell take us in. So with the fading of the bell, we let go of that sound and just come into the awareness of the body resting on our meditation support, whatever it is. We're feeling the body resting, really feeling that groundedness. Feeling the support. And from that base of support for our body, feeling the spine moving upwards, as we did in the first meditation, the head balancing. And so we feel that balance of the grounding, knowing that we're being held, and the uprightness, yet relaxation. Just feeling how this body feels right here, right now. Not judging it, just noticing maybe any sensations or just an overall sense of the body. Resting yet alert. And we can bring our awareness to the mind. The mind rests in the body, because our awareness is of the whole body. So how is the mind as it rests in the body? Is it still spinning with some of the ideas that we were talking about? Or is it gone to sleep? Or is it relaxed and alert? Not judging it, just noticing how the mind is. So clarity, confusion. Are we already planning what we're going to do after this meditation's over? Are we thinking about the past? Where is the mind? Just inviting it to rest in the awareness of the body. So we can set the intention to be aware of sensations, feelings as they arise and as they fade away in the body. So maybe we'll notice the pressure of our hands on our legs, we'll feel the beat of our heart. Maybe a sound will come in as an impression on the body, the breath, noticing the coming and going of sensations in the body. Making the intention to just be with, notice things coming and going. An itch, a throb, a pressure, the breath, the heart, coming and going. And maybe a thought will come in occasionally. Am I doing this right? Maybe planning, just noticing the thoughts arising too. And resetting the intention to just be aware of sensations coming and going in the body. And maybe we notice that the mind gets stuck on something, maybe a painful sensation in the body or a thought that comes up that we get caught up in. And we can just notice when that happens and notice how the body is in response to that when we're caught. Is there attention? So just noticing this and then resetting our intention to just be present with the coming and going of sensations, sounds, occasional thoughts, maybe coming and going. Checking in once again to see if we're caught on something, and if we are, how that feels in the mind and the body. And then going back to watching things coming and going. This is the nature of experience. It's constantly changing, constant transitions. We're aware of this or that. If we don't hold on to things, they just come and go and move on. Maybe the mind is relaxed enough to actually notice that behind that coming and going, there's an awareness that doesn't change. It's calm, steady awareness. This is our wisdom. This is our still point, our quiet mind. It's watching everything coming and going. And we can take refuge in that stillness, knowing it's always there, even in the midst of all the coming and going of experience. We can notice how the mind and the body are right here, right now, directly experiencing, learning more about ourselves every time we do this investigation to see where the mind goes, how the mind and the body interact, what leads to peace and what leads to tension. And our wisdom naturally inclines towards peace eventually. We do this for our benefit and for the benefit of all we come in contact with. May we all be at ease. So bringing your awareness back to your body, your surroundings, and just take a moment to reflect on your experience, anything you might have noticed, and then letting that go.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ross. So we haven't, let's end with our dedication of merit. We haven't used that in several times, so let's end with that today, since there is a lot of merit in the world. So may the merit of our practice support and nourish us. May we feel inner wealth so that we can practice the joy of giving. May we offer goodwill, knowing that we cannot control the course of life, suffering, or death. May we see our own limits with compassion, just as we offer compassion to others. May our practice train the heart in clarity, kindness, and wisdom. May all beings, not one left out, be well, safe, and free from suffering. So may the integrity and persistence and wisdom of Jarvis J Masters be an inspiration to all of us. And may we all recognize that we are practicing along with him every day. I'm really glad to be here, and we'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Ms. Ross?
Yeah, same, just thank you for being here, and keep thinking of you all and practicing with you. Be well, take care.
Yes.